Wesley Blake didn't do takeout. Not personally, anyway. But tonight, after a brutal 12-hour day, 2 board meetings, and a failed negotiation with a tech company that swore it didn't need his investment, he found himself standing in line at a hole-in-the-wall Thai place that smelled like heaven and looked like it hadn't changed since 1998. He tugged off his rain-damp coat, his custom Italian shoes squeaking slightly on the worn tile floor. The guy in front of him was arguing about his missing spring rolls. Wesley exhaled, impatient, already regretting this detour. Then he looked up and saw her. She stood behind the counter, scribbling something on a paper bag while laughing at something the chef yelled in Thai. Her apron was splattered with sauce, a loose strand of chestnut hair curled against her cheek, and her eyes lit up like she actually liked being here. She looked up, caught his stare, and smiled. Not the fake kind he was used to. Real. Warm. Disarming. "Hi. What can I get for you?" she asked, grabbing a pen. He blinked. Chicken pad CEW. Medium spice. Name? He hesitated. He never gave his real name in places like this. But something about her made lying feel wrong. "Wesley." Her nose wrinkled as she jotted it down. "You look like a Wesley. You're too well dressed to be anything else." He almost laughed. "Almost? Is that a bad thing?" "Depends. Are you gonna complain if we forget the extra peanuts?" He leaned forward slightly, intrigued. "Are you the one I complained to?" "I'm the one who'll pretend to care," she said with a wink before slipping the order behind her on the hook. That was the moment. He didn't know it yet, but that was when it happened. "Give me 10 minutes, she said, already turning to the next customer. Wesley stepped aside, his mind oddly blank. He'd had women fawn over him for his black card, his penthouse, his name. But she hadn't even blinked. Hadn't asked who he was. Hadn't cared. He watched her work. She moved quickly but with purpose. She joked with the cooks. She handled a frustrated guy who wanted his food comped with a calmness that would terrify most of his assistants. She was in control even in chaos. When she finally handed him the brown paper bag, her fingers brushed his. "Here you go, Wesley. Extra peanuts. No complaints." He stared at her name tag. "Olive?" "Yep. Is that your real name, or do you just like confusing people?" She laughed. "It's real. Like the fruit. Or the oil. Or the color." He didn't want to walk away. He hadn't felt this weird pull towards someone in years. Maybe ever. "Do you?" he started, then stopped. What was he doing? This wasn't him. He didn't ask out people who handed him food in strip mall restaurants. "Do I what?" she asked, still smiling. He cleared his throat. "Do you always make the night shift this entertaining?" She tilted her head. "Only when a guy in a $5,000 coat shows up and doesn't order anything fried." He chuckled. "I'll remember that next time." "Next time?" she asked, eyes dancing. "Yeah," he said, feeling something in his chest shift. "Definitely." Wesley came back 2 nights later. He told himself it was because the food had been surprisingly good. He even made his driver drop him off a block away so it wouldn't look weird if anyone saw his Bugatti parked outside. But when Olive looked up and saw him, her smile made everything else fade. "Back already?" she teased. "I forgot to complain about the peanuts." She laughed. "Darn. I knew I shouldn't have been nice." The second night, they talked more. He asked about the restaurant. She told him her parents used to own it. But after her dad passed, she took over so her mom wouldn't have to sell it. She'd been running it for 3 years, working full-time and taking online college classes when she could. He was impressed. And that didn't happen often. She didn't ask about him. Didn't seem to care what car he drove or why he always wore a watch that cost more than most people's rent. But he started telling her anyway. Not about the billion-dollar companies or the Forbes features. Just small things. He told her he hated cold weather. That his mom used to make him rice noodles when he was sick. That he never had time to cook anything himself. "You're basically helpless," she declared. Not helpless. Busy. Same thing. He didn't mind her teasing. He liked it. By the 5th visit, she had his order ready before he even walked in. "I figured you'd show up around now," she said, holding out the bag. "You're psychic now?" "No. You've got a pattern." Monday, Thursday, Saturday. He raised an eyebrow. You're keeping track? She crossed her arms. I run a business. I notice things. He looked at her then, really looked. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. Her shirt had a faint curry stain on the collar. There was a line of people behind him, and he didn't care. Go out with me, he said suddenly. She blinked. What? Dinner. Not here. Somewhere nicer. Just us. She hesitated. You don't even know me. I'm trying to fix that. She studied him. You're persistent. I'm a businessman. It's what I do. After a beat, she smiled. Okay. One dinner. 2 nights later, he sent a car. Not a limo. Just a sleek black SUV with a driver who knew how to open doors and say nothing. He took her to a private rooftop restaurant in Midtown. The view was stunning. The food was even better. But Olive? She made everything else fade to the background. You really didn't have to go all out, she said as they sat at the table with a view of the skyline. I wanted to, he said simply. She looked around. So what do you actually do, Wesley? I run a venture capital firm. We invest in startups. I also own some companies outright. She raised an eyebrow. Like? How many? He sipped his wine. 32, last I checked. Her mouth dropped open slightly. You're ridiculously rich, aren't you? He gave her a small grin. Ridiculously. She leaned back, eyes narrowing. Why are you eating at my place then? I didn't want to talk to anyone. I'd had a day. And then you smiled at me like nothing outside those walls mattered. She blushed. That's not fair. What? Saying things like that. He reached across and took her hand. I don't do this. I don't chase people. But I can't stop thinking about you. She looked down at their joined hands. You're serious? Dead serious. He paused. Is that a problem? She looked up at him, her eyes soft. No. It might be the best thing that's happened to me in a long time. Wesley didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then quietly he said, same? You're late, Olive said, lifting her brows as Wesley stepped into the kitchen of her restaurant, a breath of cool air chasing in behind him. I brought croissants, he replied, holding up a crisp white bag with a golden emblem. That buys me at least 2 minutes of forgiveness. She took the bag, sniffed, and gave a reluctant nod. 3 if there's almond. There's always almond. She set the pastries aside and wiped her hands on a towel. The kitchen was quieter than usual early morning, before the lunch rush. He'd called the night before, asking if he could stop by. She hadn't expected him to actually show up. But here he was again, in jeans that probably cost more than her monthly rent and a sweater soft enough to be illegal. You know, she said, leaning against the counter, you don't strike me as the type who voluntarily walks into grease-scented kitchens at 9 a.m. I don't, he said, glancing around. But I figured if I wanted to see you before your shift started, I'd have to come to you. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Why? Because I've been thinking about you all week. She faltered just for a second. You should probably get a hobby. I have one, he said. You. A short laugh escaped her before she could stop it. You can't collect people like you collect companies. I'm not trying to collect you, he said, stepping closer. I'm trying to understand you. Olive crossed her arms. That sounds dangerously close to psychoanalyzing me. Not at all, he said. It's curiosity. I know what you do every day. I know you run this place like it's your heartbeat. But I don't know what you want outside of here. Her expression shifted just slightly. You don't ask easy questions, do you? I don't have time for easy. She looked away for a moment, chewing on her bottom lip. I used to think I wanted to get out, move to another state, start over. But when my dad got sick, everything changed. He built this place from nothing. It mattered to him. And somehow, it started to matter to me too. I get that, he said quietly. But sometimes, she went on, I wonder if I'm just scared. Like maybe I'm clinging to something because it feels safe. Familiar. Familiar isn't always bad, he said. But it can be limiting. He nodded once. So what would you do if you weren't here? She hesitated. Open a bookstore cafe. Somewhere quiet. With old wood floors and a cat sitting in the window. Serve coffee and stories. Maybe even write something of my own. Wesley studied her face, the flicker of longing behind her words. Why haven't you? I don't have a safety net, she said. If I fall hard. What if someone offered you one? She turned toward him fully, brow furrowing. Are you offering to fund my fantasy? No, he said. I'm offering to believe in it. Something in her shifted then. A flicker of something vulnerable, quickly buried. I should start prepping for lunch, she said, brushing past him toward the fridge. He didn't stop her. Instead, he stepped into her space again, catching her wrist lightly. Come with me this weekend. She blinked at him. Where? My place in the Hamptons. I'm hosting a charity dinner. Just a few people. I want you there. Her voice was careful. As what? He didn't hesitate. As someone I want to get to know better. She pulled her hand free gently. I'm not good at pretending to be someone I'm not. I'm not asking you to. I don't have anything to wear to something like that. I'll take care of it. That's not the point. Then tell me what is. She looked up at him, eyes steady. I don't want to be your charity project. His jaw tensed. You think that's what this is? I don't know. I don't know what this is. He stepped back, giving her space. Then come with me. Find out. She didn't answer right away. The hum of the fridge filled the silence between them. Fine, she said at last. One night. But I'm not promising anything. I'm not asking you to, he said. Just show up. She turned back to the prep table, reaching for a cutting board. You're going to regret this when I spill sauce on your tuxedo. I don't wear tuxedos, he said, already heading for the door. They're too predictable. She shook her head as he disappeared into the hallway, muttering to herself. What have I agreed to? Saturday came with a storm that threatened to cancel flights and ruin hairdos across the East Coast. Wesley's driver picked Olive up from her apartment promptly at 5. She'd almost canceled 3 times before then, but her mother had practically shoved her out the door once she saw the gown waiting inside the garment bag. The dress was navy blue, floor-length, with a plunging back and delicate embroidery that shimmered under light. Olive didn't understand how it fit perfectly. She hadn't given her size. But somehow it did. The car drove through winding roads until the trees gave way to the ocean. His house, or rather, estate, rose up like something out of a magazine. Elegant, massive, drenched in warm light and soft jazz floating through open windows. Wesley met her at the entrance wearing a deep charcoal suit with no tie. His eyes scanned her, slowly, reverently. You look, he began, then shook his head. There's no word that covers it. She rolled her eyes. Don't go poetic on me now. He offered his arm. You nervous? I'm terrified. You don't have to be. They're just people. They're your people. They're not why I'm here. Inside, the party buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. Olive recognized faces from magazines and TV. A senator's wife. A tech mogul. A supermodel wearing something sheer and sparkly. Wesley stayed by her side, introducing her by name, just Olive. No labels, no explanations. At one point, a tall man with silver hair and a deep tan approached, glass of whiskey in hand. Blake, you've been hiding. Not hiding, Wesley said. Just enjoying better company. The man's eyes flicked to Olive. You're not from this world, are you? No, she said, cool and calm. But I'm visiting. Wesley grinned. She's fluent in sarcasm. It's why I like her. Later, they slipped out to the balcony, the ocean dark and churning below. You didn't have to defend me in there, she said quietly. I didn't. I introduced you. Her voice was softer now. You make me feel like I belong somewhere I never thought I would. You do belong here. Maybe I don't want to. He turned to face her. Then where do you want to be? She hesitated, then said, somewhere that feels like mine. He nodded once. I can help you build it. She looked up at him, eyes wide. Why would you do that? Because I want more than just a weekend with you, Olive. I want something real. The wind picked up, her hair whipping across her face. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then quietly, okay, let's see how real this can get. The first time Olive stepped into Wesley's Manhattan penthouse, she stopped dead just inside the door, her coat still clutched in her hand. This isn't a place, she said. It's a skyline with walls. Wesley took her coat, setting it down carefully on a nearby velvet bench. You said you liked quiet. She turned in a slow circle, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the sprawling open floor plan, the art that looked like it belonged in a museum. The space was immaculate but not cold. There were signs of him scattered throughout: an open book on the side table, a half-full espresso cup, a leather-bound notebook with a pen tucked inside. I didn't expect it to feel lived in, she said. I don't bring people here. She glanced at him. Ever? He shook his head. Not unless I have to. This place is for when I need to think. She looked back out at the glittering city below. Then why bring me? Because lately, I think better when you're around. He moved past her to the kitchen, where a bottle of wine was already breathing. She followed, still taking in the space like she expected it to vanish if she blinked too fast. I thought you'd have staff doing this, she said as he poured 2 glasses. I gave them the night off. You have enough wine here to open your own bar. I've considered it, he said, but I'd need a bartender with better taste than me. She accepted the glass he handed her. I'm not certified, but I'm good at faking it. They sat on the low sofa near the windows. The city buzzed far below, distant and unimportant. Olive tucked her legs beneath her. What made you start all this? The investments. The companies. The $1 million suits. I got tired of watching other people make decisions for me, he said. I wanted control. She tilted her head. And do you have it now? In business? Always. But not in life? He hesitated. I thought I did. Until a few weeks ago when you made fun of my coat and didn't ask what I drove. She laughed softly, then took a slow sip of wine. I still don't know what you drive. I'd rather keep it that way. She glanced at him. Why? Because I like how you look at me when you don't know all the numbers attached to my name. She held his gaze. I know enough now. His voice dropped slightly. And? I haven't left. He set down his glass. I need you to know I'm not here for a distraction. I didn't think you were. I mean it, Olive. I've built everything in my life to be untouchable. But when I'm with you, I actually feel something. That doesn't happen to me. She turned her face toward the window, the city lights dancing in her eyes. I'm not sure what to do with that. He leaned forward. Do anything but walk away? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, I don't know how to be part of your world. Then let's build one that's ours. She looked at him, startled. That's a very expensive sentence. I can afford it. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of things unsaid, of choices not yet made. Then she stood. Show me your favorite place in here. He rose too. Come on. He led her past the living room and down a hallway lined with black and white photographs. At the end was a door he opened, slowly revealing a room filled with books from floor to ceiling. Rich mahogany shelves, a ladder on a rail, a pair of leather chairs facing a fireplace that flickered gently. You read? She asked. More than people think. She wandered inside, running her hand across the spines. You've got first editions in here. He nodded. That one, he said, pointing, was a gift from my mother. She used to read to me before I could walk. She pulled the book down carefully. Why don't you ever talk about her? I don't talk about most things. She turned to him. Do you want to? He hesitated. Then, she died when I was 23. Cancer. She was the only person who made me feel like I didn't have to earn love. Olive stepped closer. That's not something you should have to earn. I know. But when she was gone, I didn't know how to let anyone else in. She reached for his hand. Maybe that's changing. He looked at her then, not with the polished confidence he wore in boardrooms, but with something raw and real. You scare me. Why? Because you make me want to become someone better. She laughed, quiet and low. I'm not sure I'm that inspiring. You are. She squeezed his hand. Then don't waste it. Later, they sat in the library, reading in companionable silence. No need to fill the space with explanations. No need to define what was happening. It was unfolding, moment by moment, without pressure or pretense. When she fell asleep with her head against his shoulder, he didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the fire, letting himself feel all of it. The next morning, before she left, Olive paused at the door. There's a fundraiser next week, she said. For the local food bank. I'm organizing it. He raised an eyebrow. You didn't strike me as the gala type. It's not a gala. It's at a community center. There'll be crockpots and folding chairs. Sounds glamorous. I need someone to help run the donations table. His smile was slow and genuine. You're recruiting me? Only if you're serious about building something. He stepped forward and kissed her forehead. Tell me what time to be there. And just like that, the space between them narrowed again, not all at once, but enough to know it wasn't going to stretch back. Not now. Not after this. The wind off the river was sharp that night, tugging at Olive's coat as she pinned the last flyer to the bulletin board outside the community center. Her fingers were freezing, but she didn't care. The turnout had doubled from last year. Volunteers were still bustling inside, repacking shelf-stable donations and distributing warm meals to whoever needed them. She glanced over her shoulder, watching as Wesley balanced a box of canned goods on one arm while redirecting a confused teenager to the right table. He looked completely out of place in his tailored navy wool coat and cashmere-lined gloves, but there was no stiffness in his movements. No hesitance. He wasn't performing kindness, he was just doing the work, sleeves rolled up like everyone else. Tell me again why you let me talk you into this, she asked as he set the box down beside her. Because I've never sorted this many cans of chickpeas in my life, he said, brushing his palms together. And apparently that was a gaping hole in my experience. She laughed, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. You could have written a check. I still might, he said. But you said you needed hands, not headlines. She eyed him. And you listened? I don't want to be the man who doesn't. Something passed between them then, unspoken, but certain. It had been building for days, maybe weeks. From that first quiet moment in his library to now. She hadn't meant to fall for someone like Wesley Blake. But here she was, watching him lift crates and pour coffee with the same ease he closed million-dollar deals. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of handshakes, gratitude, and the soft hum of community. When the last thank you had been exchanged and the doors locked behind them, Wesley reached for her hand without a word. She let him. They walked in silence down the block, the city quiet this late, the street lamps casting long shadows on the pavement. I've been thinking, he said as they reached the corner. That's never a good sign. I want to invest in something. She looked up at him. Another startup? No, he said. You. She stopped walking. Wes, let me finish, he said, his voice gentler than she'd ever heard it. You told me once that you wanted something of your own. A bookstore cafe. A place that felt like yours. Her mouth opened, but he lifted a hand before she could speak. I'm not offering to hand it to you. I'm offering to be your partner. Financially, yes, but only if that's what you want. We create it together. You run it. You design it. I stay out of the way unless you want advice. She stared at him, heart-thudding. You do that. I already have, he said. I found a space. It's in the East Village, old brick, big windows. Needs work, but the bones are good. Her breath caught. You didn't. I did. I signed a lease in both our names, he said. And if you hate the idea, I'll cancel it tomorrow. But I saw it and I could just picture it. You. There. Running the place you imagined. She didn't speak for a long moment. Her fingers curled tighter around his. I'm not used to people giving me things without expecting something back, she said finally. I'm not giving, he said. I'm building. With you. She stepped closer. What if I mess it up? Then we figure it out. She exhaled slowly. I want it. He smiled, not the polished, practiced one she'd seen in magazines, but something quieter. Deeper. Then it's yours. The next day, the space was everything he said it would be. Dusty wood floors, exposed brick, a back room that could be turned into a kitchen. Olive wandered from one corner to the next, touching the window frames, envisioning shelves and tables and handwritten menu boards. Wesley stayed behind, letting her explore on her own, giving her the space to dream out loud. When she turned to him, cheeks flushed with excitement, she said, I already know what I want to call it. He raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. Something literary and ironic. She grinned. Chapter 1. He nodded once. Perfect. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Contractors arrived. Paint samples were debated. Wesley's assistant connected them to a local designer who specialized in small business interiors. Olive chose every detail with ruthless focus, paperbacks over hardcovers, vintage lights over modern chandeliers, a small stage for local readings. Wesley never interfered. But he was always there. And when the soft opening finally came and a line stretched down the block before the doors even opened, he stood beside her behind the counter wearing an apron she'd forced him into, laughing as he tried and failed to make a decent cappuccino. You burned the milk again, she said, reaching for the pitcher. I'm a venture capitalist, not a barista, he muttered. Clearly. But later, when the last customer had left and the lights dimmed to a soft golden hue, Olive leaned against the counter and looked at him. You know, she said, voice quiet, this started with a noodle order. He stepped closer. And a woman who told me I looked too expensive for peanuts. She laughed. I still can't believe you kept coming back. I couldn't help it. You were the first person in a long time who didn't want anything from me. I didn't know you had anything to want. Exactly. She set down the rag she'd been using to wipe the counter. So what happens now? He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, square box. Her breath caught. Wesley, it's not what you think, he said, holding it out. Inside was a key. Simple. Silver. Unadorned. To the penthouse? She asked, smiling. He shook his head. To this place. The final lease in your name. I already signed over my share. She blinked. You're giving it to me? I promised this would be yours. I meant it. Her throat tightened. Why are you doing this? He reached for her hand. Because I love you, Olive. Her eyes filled instantly. Even when I correct your milk steaming technique? Especially then. She kissed him in the middle of the café, the scent of coffee and fresh paint still lingering in the air. And in that moment, with the city quiet outside and the whole world narrowed to the space between them, Olive knew. She hadn't just built a dream. She'd found her home. The snow was falling in soft, lazy spirals by the time Olive turned the sign on the door to closed. Through the tall windows of Chapter 1, the street lamps cast a golden glow on the blanketed sidewalks, and the last of the evening's customers had long since gone, their laughter still echoing faintly in her ears. Wesley stood near the back shelves, thumbing through a novel she hadn't seen him pick up. He looked content, his coat draped over the arm of one of the mismatched reading chairs, a mug of lukewarm tea forgotten on the windowsill. Olive crossed the room and leaned her arms on the counter, watching him with quiet amusement. You always read the last page first? He looked up. Only when I want to know if the ending's worth the journey. She tilted her head. And is it? With you? He closed the book gently. Always. The cafe had been open for just over a month, and already it had become more than she imagined. The soft buzz of regulars, the quiet joy of strangers finding stories they hadn't known they needed, the small notes left in the suggestion jar by readers who appreciated the handwritten staff recommendations. It was hers, theirs, and it felt like it had always been waiting for her. Wesley walked over, his eyes on her the way they always were, now unapologetically focused, but softer than they used to be. You're not staying overnight again, are you? He asked, eyeing the back room. I was thinking about it, she said. We still haven't figured out the seating for the children's corner. It's nearly midnight, and you're running on half a sandwich and 3 espresso shots. Her mouth twisted. You counted. I always count when it comes to you. She stared at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she reached under the counter and pulled out a small, square envelope. He took it, raising an eyebrow. What's this? Open it. Inside was a photograph, an old one. Her father standing in front of the original Thai restaurant, the sign behind him faded but proud. He was holding a spatula in one hand and lifting a peace sign with the other. Wesley looked up from the photo, something warm flickering behind his eyes. It was his dream, Olive said. To build something from nothing. And somehow I ended up building something that feels like both of us. He tucked the photo into his coat pocket carefully. Then I'm honored to be a part of it. You're more than a part of it, she said. You're the reason I stopped being afraid to want more. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. And you're the reason I stopped believing that love was a liability. She let out a shaky breath. You know, we never celebrated properly. The opening? No. Us. He tilted his head. You want champagne? I want something better, she said, pulling a small velvet box from beneath the counter. He froze, his brows lifting as she held it out. I know this is backwards, she said. But I also know you're the kind of man who's been in control of every decision in his life. So maybe it's my turn to choose something. He opened the box slowly. Inside, nestled in blue velvet, was a ring. A simple platinum band, elegant and timeless, with an inscription on the inside, for every chapter to come. You're proposing to me, he said, voice low. I'm proposing we start the next page together. He didn't speak right away. Instead, his hand closed around hers and his eyes searched her face like he was memorizing every part of it. Yes, he said finally. But only if I get to do it properly too. She blinked. What do you mean? He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a ring box that looked suspiciously like it had been waiting there for a while. You beat me to it by 10 minutes, he said, opening it to reveal a ring that glittered like snowfall. But I've been carrying this for a week. She laughed, eyes bright. Seriously. I was waiting for the perfect moment, but then you created it. They exchanged rings right there behind the counter, surrounded by books and the scent of vanilla chai. There was no announcement, no flash of cameras, just the quiet certainty of two people ready for forever. The wedding was small, just the way they wanted. Held in the courtyard behind the café, strung with fairy lights and lined with shelves of favorite books instead of flower arrangements. Olive wore a white tea-length dress with embroidered sleeves, and Wesley stood beside her in a navy suit that matched the sky above. Her mother cried through the entire ceremony, seated between Wesley's cousin from Boston and Olive's college roommate who flew in from Oregon. The officiant read a poem instead of vows one Olive had written herself, tucked inside a leather notebook Wesley had gifted her months before. Afterward, they danced in the narrow alleyway beside the shop, their footsteps echoing off the old brick walls, laughter mingling with acoustic guitar from the band tucked in the corner. And when the last guest had gone and the lights dimmed, Wesley took her hand and led her through the back door into the café. I have something to show you, he said. He pulled a key from his pocket and opened the door to the upstairs unit, the one above the shop that had remained empty since the beginning. Inside, it had been completely transformed. Warmwood floors, a kitchen with copper fixtures, a reading nook beside a tall, arched window. At the center of the living room was a hand-carved bookshelf, already filled. You did this, she whispered. We did this, he corrected. I just followed your lead. She turned toward him, her breath catching. I don't even have words. Then don't say anything, he murmured, pulling her into a kiss that was slow and certain. Later, they lay in bed with the window cracked open, the quiet hum of the city floating in. She rested her head on his chest, fingers tracing lazy lines across his skin. Do you ever miss it? She asked sleepily. The world you came from? I don't, he said, because the only thing I ever really wanted was this. A bookstore above a cafe? A life that makes sense. A love that's real. You. She smiled against his chest. You're getting soft. I'm getting smart. They fell asleep like that, tangled together beneath a quilt her mother had brought back from a trip to Vermont, surrounded by the scent of old pages and the soft promise of everything ahead. And in every way that mattered, their story had only just begun. But for once, they weren't rushing toward the next chapter. They were living fully in the one they had written hand in hand, hearts wide open, home at last.